new updates. Okay, my name is Deanna. You're on the Laughter After Show. And in this show, we highlight people from all walks of life. I am a thriver after intimate partner violence. I'm a speaker and a coach. And what I do is I bring light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. And I have guests on the show who also share their way. They share their walk through life, their journey, and show us that if we can, you can. And today's guest is Keri Wilt. Keri is a speaker, she's a writer, she's a podcaster, and she's a heart cultivator. And she has a mission of her own. Her mission is to plant seeds of hope into those who are leading lockup and weed filled and withering lives. And her mission is to inspire them to do the hard and heart work of life and tending to that life. She happens to be the great-great-granddaughter of Frances Hodgson Burnett. I think I said that right. And that is the author of The Secret Garden. I'm pretty sure all of us know that book and a couple of the movies. She actually consulted on the last movie. I agree. And a couple of other books. Her great-great-grandmother was a prolific author. So with that being said, I'm going to bring Keri up to camera. We're going to get to see her, talk to her, and get to know her a little bit. There we are. Hey.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to turn a light on now. It's gotten dark outside.
Oh, goodness. I hear
the
you.
lights shifted a little bit in here.
Oh, okay. So fun thing is Keri and I, so if you guys got to see a few weeks back, I had Ashley Ellington Brown on the show, and that's how we got connected. She was like, hey, you should go, do her podcast with her. And I was like, okay, and we talked about meditation and stuff. As a matter of fact, I'll be talking about some things like that this Thursday on Allison's show, who she's in here. And that's kind of how we got connected. But I'm not going to drag on about how we got connected. I want people to get to know you. So, Keri, tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you are. Just give us a little background information about you.
Yeah, I am from Texas, born and raised, live kind of north of San Antonio, west of Austin in the Texas Hill Country with my 3 rescue dogs. I have 2 kids. I have one in college and one who's 16. So I like to tell people I'm a retired Uber driver. I am no longer in charge of taking anyone anywhere except for myself, which is like newfound freedom. I miss the old. I do miss the car time, but I also I'm enjoying this new part of life. Been married for 23 years to my husband, and we own a restaurant together, as well as we have some vacation rentals, as well as I do this thing called the Well-Tended Life, where, like you said, I really feel like my mission is to help plant seeds of hope into those who were in the same spot I was, just 5-10 years ago, where I was locked up withering. I was watering everything else but myself. And I found myself basically buried under a pile of weeds that most of them I planted there in the first place. So just trying to share what I've learned and the seeds that I found that were tucked inside the pages of my great-great-grandmother's book, The Secret Garden, which is crazy to think that my great-great-grandmother's words that were written, over 100 years ago would be the things that I needed at the right time, at the right place. It always just reminds me of, like, you never know, like, the words that you speak, how they will affect someone. It may be just, you're beautiful today, and it was just exactly those words that someone needed to hear. You never know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that because we are we had a couple of times a guest on here who loves the inspirational memes, and she was one time on the show with dealing with a lot of she talked about how she had to deal with a lot of grief. She's had a lot of loss, one of which was her son, and And she was like, I wanted to choose to be happy and pick my mood, but those memes and those little inspirational quotes, I'd save them because they
Yeah.
got me through. And so we don't know. We don't know who we're impacting. And so that's really cool. And I want to get into that story. But before we do,
Yeah.
let's get to know you just a little bit through a this or that, because I do kind
Go
of
for
like
it.
to do that, this or that, just to see where people are, so I know you've done some writing,
Yes.
and so I'm going to ask you that question, and that question is always book in hand or Audible.
Oh, girl, Audible. I ain't got time to read.
Love it.
That
I love
is
it.
the absolute truth. I have some big goals and some, I'm writing too. So I find that reading is hard because the reading that I'm doing right now is, or at least for working on my book, I'm reading my own words.
Right.
So to be able to just put something in on my earbuds while I'm walking or riding my bike is, it's life giving.
Yeah.
It's really life giving, but you have to have a really good reader. Don't fall for the trap of getting a book before you listen to it, people. Listen, it's important. A bad reader is not good. It's horrible.
So listen to the sample is what you're saying.
Listen to the sample.
So I listen to the Harry Potter books. Like, that's like my comfort place. And the guy who reads the Harry Potter books, his name is Jim Dale. He is amazing. And
Right.
there are a lot of characters in that book. A lot of characters.
It makes a
Thank
break.
you.
It makes or break a book.
True.
I'm reading a very, very good book. But the author reads it, and she's a doctor, and she's very, very dry. And I am trudging through so because there's such good content, but it's killing me,
Yes.
killing me.
I get that too. I've had those books that are not just a novel, they're just a book, and you like, you're learning, and it's like, oof, I would not want this person as my professor.
Nope,
Right.
nope, nope.
Okay. So, second question, and we'll stop with this one. We'll only do two because
Sure.
we went on with that one. But toilet paper, over or under?
Oh, honestly, I don't care, and I don't notice the difference. It's not important to me, as long as it works. I'm not a particular person like that.
That's funny. So, I've had so many people on here, and I've never had someone who said they don't care. They're
No.
very adamant about how the toilet paper
And
goes.
listen, as long as there's toilet paper there. I live in a house that there's not always toilet paper there when I sit down, and it's not a good thing. So
Oh, God.
I go around and stash toilet paper like around in the bathroom, like under sinks and stuff to make sure, because I'm the one that's going to get caught short.
Right. I love that. That's funny. I hear you. All right. So, as long as there's toilet paper, we don't care how it
No.
makes it. It could be on the counter. It doesn't even need to be on the roll.
Nope. Yep. Totally.
That's
I'm
right.
fine.
I
I'm
love it.
easy.
I love it. Good. All right. Well, let's get into your story because I did get a little bit of a backstory on you, but we didn't talk a whole lot. And so I'm going to be learning as we go too. And I love that. But I did read, and you just talked about how you hit this place, this wall, this bottom where you realized that maybe you needed to kind of look inward, and because you weren't tending to your garden, and
Yeah.
so, and then possibly some of the weeds were planted there by you. So tell us about this phase that led you into doing the well tended life.
You know, so probably the biggest thing that led me to bury myself, I think I probably was heading that direction anyways. But I was working for Crayola. I had this amazing job. But I'll be really clear. I felt this nudge to walk away and to go do something else. This several times kind of wedges had been put there that you go like, okay, maybe this is a sign, maybe it's not. And I'd had several of those incidences where I felt like it was probably time for me to move on. But in November, I was named Salesperson of the Year. And so, and then I'm like, well, you don't walk away at that point. But then in January, our company did a giant reorganization, and I had chosen to move from Dallas down here to the Hill Country. My husband had just started a business. I was kind of away from the corporate nest, for lack of better terms, and I got very nicely kind of said, okay, this is, you no longer have a job. Yeah. And I wasn't the only one. Once again, this was, not necessarily based on performance, but, and at the time I was like, I tried to like act like I was cool about it and I was okay. And I think I was okay on one level, but there was a level that I didn't deal with when I lost that job. I'd never lost a job before. Kind of an overachiever. I worked for them for 5 years. Like I said, I was salesperson of the year, and there was this little thing in my heart that said, maybe I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't worthy enough to keep around. Maybe something was wrong with me, and they were these really quiet conversations. It wasn't this like big thing, but what I ended up doing, and I didn't know this until I really started working this well-tended life process, what I started doing was I jumped in with like all feet, all hands, all ears, into everything. I went into this like overprove myself mode of, well, they're wrong, and let me show you how efficient and effective I am and how good of a leader I am. And I volunteered. I was on the chamber board. I was on the PTA. I was heading up new events happening in town. You name it. If it felt like something that I could be helpful with, I said yes to it.
Mm.
And I found myself in the back of our restaurant after a major event that I had put on almost by myself, because I also was like, I can do it all, right? I didn't enlist help of everybody around me. And it's like 2 a.m. and I have been stacking chairs and I'm crying in the back of the restaurant. And my husband is like, this has got to stop. Like, you can't keep doing this. You are, and he didn't use these words, but he was like, you're watering everything else. We are not getting, my family was literally not getting an ounce of my attention. I was so over involved in everything. And he was like, there's gotta be an end to this. You cannot continue to do that. We're going to lose you and you're going to lose us. And it was a very, kind conversation, but it was also like, it was the abrupt like thing, that the screech that I needed. And right about that time I was watching, or I'm not watching, I was reading The Secret Garden, actual book, not listening, actual book. And like what we were talking about, like those right words at the right time, right where I needed it. And when Mary first like walks into the secret garden, and she says, this is it. And she like breathes it in. It was a mess. It was weed filled and it was cluttered and there was debris everywhere. And all of a sudden I'm sitting in bed going, this is my life. This is what my life has become. Like, there were blooms under there, but I couldn't see them. My purpose was under there, but I didn't even know what it was anymore. I didn't know what I loved. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know anything at that point. I knew, as I started to read The Secret Garden, I was like, oh, I have to start tending to myself.
Right. So let me stop you here for a second, because I have a question, and that has to do with where you found yourself in this place. And your husband noticed it. So I love this. Okay. One thing I do love is a supportive partner in life. I mean, that is like, that makes a big difference. When you have the support behind you, I don't care where it's coming from or how that's happening for you. I mean, know that that's a huge blessing in and of itself.
Yes.
But the question is, how was this affecting you physically? So I get that you were dealing with all of this stuff, or avoiding all of this stuff by doing everything. And a lot of times what happens in those situations is we don't only suffer, emotionally, or, our mental health, or any, anxiety. But all of that actually usually takes a physical toll on you too. So did that happen for you? How did that play in?
So, I probably wouldn't have at the time recognized that it was a physical manifestation of what was happening around me. But yeah, I mean, I've had hip issues off and on, where that's kind of where I carry my tension. Some
Mm-hmm.
people carry it in their shoulders. It's my right hip, for me, and so and exhausted, constantly exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
never feeling like I could get enough sleep to have enough energy to do all the things. And I probably wasn't. I'm sure I was eating on the fly. I wasn't getting any exercise. I was sitting in board meetings and all the
Mm-hmm.
things.
So, so you decided to pick up The Secret Garden. What made you even decide to read that? Like, why did you say, "Oh, I'm just going to read this book right now, book in hand"?
I have to say God's perfect timing. So I was almost 40, and gosh, I always hate admitting this, but this is the truth. It was the first time I had read The Secret Garden, read it.
Mm,
I had seen the movies. I grew up with my mother giving speeches about my great great grandmother, but I never physically read the book. I think I thought I already knew. I know I thought I already knew the story, but I also knew that. I think I knew somewhere down deep inside that once I connected with her and her words, that I'd say more would be expected of me. But I knew that there was something there that I was supposed to do.
mm,
My mother used to do all of the historical lecturing. I knew that would be passed down to me. I'm the only girl in the family, so I knew that would be my legacy to do that. But I certainly didn't know that it would be in this way,
right.
and that it would be more of a motivational and inspirational side, versus just making sure that her words are still read, going
Yeah.
forward.
Wow. I love that. So, Deborah Barsha, she just popped out, but she works on Broadway, and she said The Secret Garden's an amazing musical too.
Oh, if you get a chance to go see it, go see it. It is
Yeah.
so good. I know every single word. Don't, I mean, we're not
I
going to
bet.
sing
I
here,
bet.
but maybe
Oh,
later.
come on now. All right. So you picked up the book, you started reading it, and as you started reading it, you started looking at it through the lens of your life and going, this looks like what my life looks like right now. And so tell us kind of how you walked through that and got to kind of where you are.
So, I mean, I think one of my biggest ahas was just realizing that, just like when Mary walked in and said, "Oh, this is it." Um, I think sometimes we look at our own lives and we think, "Oh, this is it." Right? Like, I
Mm,
think many times if we look around at our lives and we see what weeds are in there and what debris still needs to be cleared out of the path and all the things, our hearts start to believe that maybe like this is it. But what the Secret Garden reminded me was like, this is not it. This is today.
mm,
And I have a choice, and we all have a choice. You have a choice to every day get up and turn the key and open the door and do that four-letter work that most people like to bypass. And
hmm.
that four-letter word is work,
Right.
right? You got to go to work on tending to yourself. It's absolutely daily tending is what keeps us healthy and growing and moving forward, and all of those things.
Right. And I like something that you brought up because it reminds me of something I say in coaching that I've learned from the people who founded one of my certifications. And that is, where you are is just where you are.
Yeah,
It's not who you are.
yeah.
And so I think a lot of times, like you said, for us, we start to identify with the crisis instead of recognizing, like you said, you can always get up, turn the key, do this thing, do that thing. You can change whatever it is. And oftentimes we get kind of we get blind to it because we're in it. And
Yeah.
so it's really cool that just reading that opening passage about that and seeing Mary walk into that and go, this is my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. But this is not it. This is just today,
Right.
right? It's just today. And we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. But today we're going to do some work and we're going to clear away the clutter and we're going to start to make room in our life. And that was really the second big aha for me, was that, I realized that was what was keeping me from growing and blooming. That was what was keeping me from thriving
Mm-hmm.
and finding that seed that was planted inside. That we're, I call myself a heart cultivator, because that's what I believe I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help people clear away the clutter that is keeping them from growing that thing that is already planted inside of us. Like, we all have things that we are meant to do. Like, we were meant to grow. We were given and we were created exactly how we are to do something. And it may be for one person. Like you said, it may
Mm-hmm.
be that you were here to create one meme that changes the life of someone, and that one person, that other person, then changes the lives of thousands. Like, you don't know,
Right.
right?
Right.
But when we're so covered up, we can't figure that out.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. And like right now, my freebie is all about this. It's so weird because we didn't intend to specifically talk about this, which is why I love doing this just fresh and raw, because it's all about making space for something new by decluttering. And it's not just decluttering spaces, but your space generally reflects the inside. And it's about taking, declutter your space, but declutter your mind, declutter your
Yeah.
emotions, declutter your finances. It takes a lot, but we start to realize how much that's all taking up, all the
Yeah.
energy that is being spent on those things, when you can clear that clutter, and then it makes space for you to be able to see what you were meant for, right?
Well, and it makes room in your day. So, for me, actually, today was kind of I told you on the text, I was
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm coming from a city council meeting. I got to go to a volleyball game, and then I'm sliding into you for the end.
Right.
And what I'm so glad that the day unraveled that way, because it reminded me that if I hadn't done the work of making room in my day, that all of those things packed on top of each other would have like sent me in a complete tizzy, because the city council meeting was not something I had intended to do. It was not
Mm-hmm.
on my to-do list. It was kind of an emergency thing that I ended up having to go to. And in the past, I would have been completely anxiety ridden because I didn't get the things done that I was supposed to do and all the things. But that's because I'd done the work of weeding.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say weeding, like, we all have weeds, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's not one person here that doesn't have weeds. And if you think you don't have weeds, then you need to check again.
Then you're in
I
the
think it's
weeds.
Ice Cube that says, check yourself before you wreck yourself. They're there. You are just not identifying them as weeds at this point. But weeds are those things that are like, that'll get between you and the things that you want to grow. And weeds typically can't be completely eradicated. They can be thinned, they can be managed, but typically I tell people, like, if you're wondering what your weeds are, think about like your life over the last 5 years and how many times you'll say to yourself, like, oh my gosh, I'm here again. Like, I have filled up my calendar, I have filled my plate too full, I have I'm full of anxiety, whatever it happens to be. Usually that is the thing that helps you tell you what your weeds are. But basically, the first thing you got to do is you got to identify them. So some
Right.
of the weeds I know of are like weeds of anger, right? Weeds of negativity, weeds of jealousy, worry, doubt, weeds of more, which usually manifests itself in addiction.
Mm-hmm.
More alcohol, more food, more exercise, more things,
Mm-hmm.
shopping, all those things. But also the other big one is like more fun. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
what? How could fun things be a weed? Weeds should be bad, but even too much of anything
Mm-hmm.
is gonna get in the way of you doing those things that you're called to do. right?
Right.
They're distractions.
Right.
And so you
Yeah.
gotta, you don't have to completely eradicate them, but you gotta keep them in check.
Right. And you
Um,
have to be aware, right? I mean, so, like we call,
100%.
I call it blockers, right? Fear, guilt, self sabotage,
Yeah.
focus. I call focus a blocker because I feel like it's not focus like, hey, I can focus on something. It's the lack of focus or easily distracted. And when you
Yes.
look at that, that's kind of like where you get into the weeds, where you said, like, the more. Even in the
Yeah.
fun, it's something that you have to make sure that you're keeping at bay, you're keeping in check. And we all have those places that we lean towards. I'm
Oh
a
yeah.
person who I'm going to opt for fun. As a matter of fact, if fun is not in the things that I do on a daily basis that I have to do, I find it very difficult to do.
Are you a 7 on the Enneagram?
I am a
Me
7.
too. Me too.
And so,
Yeah.
I have to incorporate it like Mary Poppins, there has to be the element of fun. But the other side of that is it's not an area I have to work on and incorporate or balance into my life, other than I have to make sure that I don't opt for the fun over the things that I need to get done.
Well,
And
right. Because growing and blooming and doing the thing that you're called to do is hard work. And
mhm,
it's not always the fun part.
right.
It's challenging and it's scary. And it's easier to do all those other things. For me, the weed that gets me is busyness.
Mhm,
Busyness
mhm,
is my number one weed. And
right.
I'm constantly having to keep it in check. And like, that's why today I was like, oh goodness, thank goodness my calendar wasn't crazy full, that I was able, to deal with the situation today. But in the past, I wouldn't have been able to. Um, but for me, the way that I was able to finally keep that weed in check, is I did 3 different things. Number
Mhm,
one, I made a list of all the things I would rather be doing if I wasn't so busy. Like, that list alone was life changing. And I
mhm,
thought, okay, this is not, this is going to take me like, 30 minutes or whatever, like 5 minutes. I was like, boom, 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 boom. And there was like 20 things. And I'm looking at this list and I'm like, why am I choosing, PTA over spending time with my parents? Or like,
right.
why am I, whatever these things were,
Mm,
they all trumped those things once I saw them in black and white. And like, then this became my like why, right? This is my why. This is why I must eradicate this weed as much as I possibly. I got to thin it out. And then I wrote a no speech
okay. Let's
because
hear it.
I
I'm here.
wasn't
I'm here for
good
that.
at saying no. You want to hear my
Uh-huh.
no speech?
Yes, I
So
definitely
it
want to hear your
has
no
changed
speech.
a little bit, but I'll give you my old one because I used to have
Okay.
chickens and all these other things in a garden. And so I would always tell people, hey, thanks for asking me to be on the board. I really appreciate it. But I don't do anything that I can't give 100% to. And right now, with all the things on my plate right now, I know that I can't give you what it is you need. Plus, I have 2 kids, a husband, 3 dogs, and 20 chickens. And if I say yes to this, one of those are not going to get fed and they will die. And you don't want blood on your hands,
I love
right?
it.
And
Oh
so,
yeah.
like, I tell them like seriously, but then I kind of gave them a little like funny ha ha. But
Right. Mhm.
but here's the deal: you can't say no unless you're prepared and ready to say it. Too many
Mhm.
times I said yes to things, um, that I can do, but I shouldn't have done. Right.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think that's
Mhm.
where some of us like get stuck is you're like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Correct.
And
That
we should
part.
all over ourselves. And
Right. I
we
have
say
a
yes
friend of
to too
mine who
many
says
things.
that. Stop shooting all over yourself.
Stop shitting all over yourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, so I love
So,
that. So the no speech is great. It takes a lot, and I think some people just need to practice and understand that no is a complete sentence all by itself.
yes.
You don't have to give somebody an explanation. It's
No,
nice to let them know,
no.
here, I would love to do this 100%, but I can't give you 100%. And if
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't give it all, then I'm not going to tarnish my reputation or risk anything that needs to be done for you by accepting that. So, which also makes me really glad that you're here doing my show. Thank you for
Yeah.
saying yes. There you go. So that's good.
Well, yeah. And then really the third thing, so make a list. And actually then even when you're ready to say no and you think you can't do it, then you need to look back at your list and remember why you need to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing for me is I have a daily journal practice
Mm-hmm.
that in my practice, every single day, I look back and I reflect on the day prior. And I look for the joy, the goodness, and the growth in the day before, because I always want to make sure that I'm noticing those things. Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
growth can be like really tiny. And when you don't notice it, you start to feel defeated. And there's joy and goodness in every single day.
Mm-hmm.
But the third thing I do is I look back and I see what weeds popped up today. Was I, was I overtired? Do I need to check my calendar? Do I, what are those things? Because that's the other thing with weeds is you got to know what your signals are. Like, how do you know if your weed is out of control? Like you said, I'm overtired. Maybe I'm a little cranky, short-tempered, whatever. For me, I mean, I get sick when I'm too busy. I can feel it. I get a little fever, whatever it happens to me. It's my, kind of canary in the coal mine that's like, hey, check your schedule, see what else you need to do.
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, because also this led to you creating a journal. Don't you have a journal?
No,
Or is
but
it
it's
just
on
a
my
journal
list.
practice?
It's on my to-do list for
So
this
it's
next
not
year.
it's not a journal that you sell, it's a journal practice. And
It's a journal
so
practice.
right.
Yes,
And
but
so
I feel like this is something I'm supposed to do, that I'm supposed to be sharing this. And so I think probably sometime next year I will have an actual physical journal, but really basically I read, I reflect, and then I weed, seed, and water every single day. It's silly simple. I read something where I can find those, I call them heart taps or aha moments. Those times when you're reading something and you look behind you and you're like, does everybody else know this was written just for me? Like, who got in here? Like, the meme or whatever it is.
who's
like
watching?
You write down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I write down what those heart taps are. Like I said, I reflect on the day before. I look at my weeds. I keep them in check, and identify anything that I know that I need to just really more just put on notice. Like you said, just kind of seeing it and knowing it's there is half the battle.
Yeah.
And then I write down what I call seeds, which are basically the things that I want to plant. These are the things that I want to grow. These are the things that I want to do and be in this world. And they're aspirations, but they're written as if they've already happened, and they're written with a why. So, whatever it happens to be, I walk every day in order to live my best healthy life, right? Like they're always connected with that. And then I write down what I'm going to water that day. Those are my intentions. Those are the things that I'm going to focus on for that day. And it's just a great way to start the day and stay conscious of who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to grow in this world.
And I love the idea of recognizing those weeds and then also shifting and going, but this is what I'm going to water. These are the seeds. This is what it really is such a beautiful thing to be aware of that and consciously and intentionally do that. And I think that, the other part that I think is really beautiful is, or that everybody needs to really take note of, is attaching a why to everything. And I know there's a lot of talk out there about, oh, you got to know your why, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing, understanding where you operate from. So I would call this my hub, right? So I know that I can rely on my friends and I can rely on fun, and that's the kind of things that are pumping me up. But the reason behind what I do for anything and everything is pretty much legacy. For some people, it might be faith, and that's okay. So for me, my faith and legacy are very intertwined. But I think at the end of the day, even putting out the faith walk is something that I want to pass on as a legacy. And so When I look at that, that really helps me understand then, well, why would I want to be fit? Why would I want to eat right? Why do I want to, do that? Well, I want to be able to keep up with my grandkids and to
Hmm.
be able to have as long of a life as I can with them. That's a why. Motivation, people, is an inside job. It's not a meme on social media. We can be inspired by people like me, like Keri, like a lot of people in this audience that I've talked with. We can be inspired by that, but the motivation only comes when we understand why we want to accomplish, because not everything's just going to be like, oh, I want to get up and exercise today.
Yeah.
Most people do not live like that. Most people go, well, I'm doing this not because I want to, but because I have a reason why this matters to me. And so I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway.
And it has to be an internal reason, right? It can't be like external pressure is
Hmm.
not sustainable, right? Like
Yep.
somebody can be like, "Hey," in your ear, and your best cheerleader, but until you inside decide that this is gonna work, I somebody referred to it as like, nobody has a friend who's walking around giving chest compressions all day long trying to keep someone alive. That heart has to decide to beat on its own, and I think the why has to be your why. It doesn't need to be, it can be for someone, that's your motivation, but it still has to be something that makes you want to stick with it.
Right. And I think for most of us, there is this part of it that has a higher purpose, a purpose that lives beyond just ourselves. And so for me, the legacy part of it does that because there's a progeny there and it lives beyond just myself. And there's more, of course. I want to spread more out into the world. Like you said, you have this big mission of being able to, impart hope and help people understand, recognize their weeds, or learn how to thin those out, how to tend to their life.
Hmm.
And that's a bigger mission than just say, your family. But at the base root of it, maybe that's a big part of it. I mean, I don't know
Of
because I don't know you
course.
what,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
so
Planting
I
those
just
same seeds all
right,
around.
right. So I mean, I think that's really cool, and for people to really kind of take that to heart, to understand what the why really is. What the why? What the why? Anyway, sounds weird, but to understand what that really means, because
Right.
there's so much talk about it. I think sometimes it starts to become, it's just like talking about self-care. When we're talking about tending your garden, that's what you're talking about. Ultimately, you're talking about taking care of yourself the way you take care
Yeah.
of everybody else. You have been doing it so long, and you have never, most of us have never taken care of ourselves the way we took care of our kids, the way we've taken care of our mates, the way we've taken care of parents. We've never taken inward and gone, oh, I should actually take care of myself like that,
Oh yeah, yeah.
tuck me in
Well,
and kiss me on the forehead and read me a book good night and rock me to sleep. You know what I mean? Like, we don't do that for ourselves.
no. And I always tell people that, like, who are busy watering their daughter's garden and their husband's garden and all the things. And I'm like, hey, listen, if your own life is withering and weed filled and needs to be pruned, do you think they really want you working on their garden? Like, go clean up yourself, and then you'll be able to pour out into others. But you can't pour from an empty watering can.
All right.
Even though you try,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the same. Imagine how much better you could water those other things if you were actually filled first.
Right. And your husband saw that,
Oh,
you know?
100%.
He was
Yes.
like, dude, you
You
need
gotta
to go
stop.
take care of some stuff, leave me alone and go take
Yeah.
care of this. And
Good.
so, and that's beautiful too, to be able to have somebody who can kind of help see that, because we don't always see it because sometimes we're so in the weeds that we can't see, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I don't think I knew until I really don't. I think
Hmm.
that I thought I was like, I'm holding it together. I got this. Look at all of these accolades. Look at all of this list of things that I'm involved in. And he's like, Yeah, I don't think that's a good thing anymore. Like, I think you crossed a line.
It
I was
was
like,
good
really?
until it wasn't.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
love that.
there's a quote in The Secret Garden that says, where you tend to rose, my lad, a thistle cannot grow." And really, that's the best weed prevention, is tending to
Hmm.
yourself,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, and it's something I've said. I love the idea of like crowding out, and you can apply it to pretty much any area of your life. If you want to thin the weeds, start putting in the things like the journaling. If you're living in gratitude, some of those weeds are going to go away, right? Because
hmm,
if you really do the work of maybe eliminating the self-talk by creating some affirmations, you're putting in the things you want, and it naturally crowds out the things you
yeah,
don't want. You can do it with your food, you can do it with your plate, you can do it with anything in any area, and it allows you to build at the same time.
yeah.
And so I think that's a really, it's cool.
Yeah,
It's
listen,
cool.
don't burn it all down. Like,
Right.
nobody needs to take a torch to their garden or their life. Like, I tell people, just start with one. Like, right?
Right.
Just pull one weed at a time. And each time it gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And sometimes there are weeds that you have to like enlist help, right? Like,
Mm.
you got to see a counselor. You got to go phone a
Mm-hmm.
friend. You need to
Mm.
be like,
Yeah.
hey, struggling with this, help me, keep those in check, or whatever it is. You don't have to do this on your own,
Right.
by any stretch of the imagination.
And accountability is such a great thing. How many of us, I know this, it holds true for me. I will definitely show up for somebody else before I've shown up for myself. And it's not a good thing. I'm not bragging about that, right?
No.
But if somebody says, meet me at the gym or on the bayou and let's go walk, I'm showing up and I'm doing it. And if they tell me, meet me here at 8 o'clock every morning and I agree to it, I'm doing it and I'm
Yeah.
going to show up for them. But if I tell myself that you're going to go walk at 8 o'clock every morning, I'm not always doing that for myself. Now I'm getting better at it. I am. I really
Yeah.
am, because this is something I've been working on. But
Yeah.
it just goes to show that sometimes we need that push. We need that accountability. We need that person there that's holding us to the fire.
Yeah.
And you need to make that known to the people that you trust so that they can really be there for you, and they'll be the ones that show up and say, okay, I'm coming because you said I have to show up. And they'll be, and it's a reciprocal thing. But we know like the SMART goal format, right? But for us in my coaching, I change the A to accountable, because, I feel like otherwise achievable and realistic seem like the same thing to me. So, you know, change
Yeah.
that to accountable and realistic. Link it to time, make it measurable, make it specific so that your intention, and that's another word that I prefer over the word goal, but that your
Yeah.
intention is going to come through. It's
Yeah.
never an ending. You're setting an intention to accomplish something, and then when you accomplish it, the next intention and the next. We're always growing. I think we were meant for that. And there's
Hmm.
parts of us that go away and new parts come in. So I think that's a very good
Seasons,
garden
girl.
analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how
Well,
many analogies you have from that
oh,
book.
I mean, Mary, she didn't make that garden grow all by herself. She had friends. She
Hmm.
enlisted help. She had a gardener that came in. She had Dickens. She had the bird. I mean, all the things, the robin. I mean, all the things came and helped her in her mission.
Yeah. So listen, before we keep going,
Yeah,
because I have a couple of other things, but I'm
sure.
just going to let people know now, if you guys want to come up and make a comment, add to the conversation, if you have something that you would like to, like some of this sparks something, and you're like, yeah, and you need to do this. Or if you have a question, for Keri, just,
Ask away.
yeah, raise your hand, hit that little plus button, and I'll bring you up to the stage. I would love to hear from you guys, and don't be shy. You don't have to come on camera unless you say, hey, can you bring me on camera? And then I will. It's fine. It's okay. Okay. So while we're waiting, because I know we're going to have some brave souls that want to come up, um, what would be three things that you could say right now that you would want us to take away from this conversation that you have developed and learned through your great grandmother's book and how you've implemented this into the well tended life?
Goodness gracious.
I'm putting you on the
Um,
spot.
I know. Well, there's so many good things. I think number one would be know your season, right?
Okay.
Before you go and say yes to anything, I think it's one of the biggest things that we don't consider before saying yes is
Mm-hmm.
understanding what season you're in. And listen, seasons can change from week to week. They can change, month to month, hour to whatever. But really look at what season you're in. Are you in a, three kids under five season and, wiping noses? Are you in a job change season? Are you in a, how much time do you have really to devote things? Like really look at the total picture before you go and say yes to anything.
Okay.
Um, I mean, clearly know your weeds. That is huge. Know what you're watering. One of the things that I do in my book that I'm working on, and when I speak to, I ask people to like close their eyes and put on their secret garden goggles and imagine their life as a garden, and really like do it like when you're talking about seasons too, but do a true assessment of what you are growing and what you're not growing and what's in your life that needs to be pruned away. Like you were talking about, decluttering. So
Mm-hmm.
many of us have like old clothes in our closets from like jobs past, right? Or seasons past, or weights past, or that we're hoping maybe will fit again, or whatever it happens to be. And those things are weighing us down and cluttering up our path, and cluttering up our hearts so that we can grow the things that we want to grow. But what else? Oh, yeah, look at your door also. I know for many seasons I had I call it a saloon door on my garden in life. One of those ones that you can push and
Yeah.
it goes both ways.
Right.
But all it does is like let in anxiety bugs and anyone and everybody in to my life and my garden. And I wasn't able to regulate it. But
Mm.
some people have like a door that's so locked up and walls that are so high that they're not letting anybody in either. And that's not healthy either. There's got to be some way to be able to say, hey, these are my boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
also I'm going to let in the people I trust, and make sure that they're a part of my life too.
I love it.
Um, Goodness gracious, there's like so many. I mean, I feel like I could just like keep
Yeah,
going,
and
but
I watch I watch you, I follow you on social media, and it's fun because every quote that you use, everything, it's like when I read this book as a kid, you don't there's so many things in it, and you just think it's such a really cool story, and it's so happy, and there's these struggles, but it turns out beautiful and all of this. But then as you get older, like as
yeah.
you are sending out these quotes, and I'm like, okay, so there's the weeds and there's the door, and and how you water it, and here's the seeds and the roses versus the thistles, and all of these things that just show up in this work, that when you put it into your quotes and then apply it to tending to your life, I mean, wow. What do you think that was 100% on purpose, like every last bit of it all just tied into making sure that it was tied to relating it to life, even from a
Frances,
young?
you're asking
Yes,
me about her writing
yes.
the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So it was one of her later books. So
Mm-hmm.
she said that she had been writing the book in her mind's eye for 25 years, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just like everything else, like when you've had that kind of experience in life, she's had tragedy, she's had sorrow, she's had relationship failures. She had two divorces. She had a garden that she brought back to life. So she too had learned a lot of those lessons. But yeah, you write about what you know. And I very much believe that she tucked life lessons inside of those pages, and I also think that that's part of the reason that her words live on today,
Mm-hmm.
is because it doesn't matter how old you are when you read it for the first time or the last time or the next time. There's always something new in there to discover. And we all, when we read or we watch a movie or we consume really anything, we're reading it through our filter of today, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow, not my 10-year-old self. Like, I have a friend who read The Secret Garden, and she was like 12-year-old, like, girl, boy crazy age. And then she read it again at 40, and she was like, I kept like flipping through going, where's the love story? There's no love story here. But her filter at the time read The Secret Garden as a love story.
That's funny.
And
Yeah.
so wherever we are, we're reading things through the lens of what's going on in our lives. And I think that's where, books like The Secret Garden, but I think anything, any
I don't,
book or
yeah, but I
any
don't think
words
all
can hit
books
us at
stand up
any
to
time.
that. I don't
Yeah.
really think all books stand up to that. I do think that there are some books that stand up to that. Like I can, I've read the Harry Potter series with my kids,
Yeah.
and I read it. They were kind of the same age, right, as
Okay.
these kids growing up, and so I read it to them at those ages, and it was, But now I'll watch it and I'll listen to it and I read it, and it's like I get these different things out of it, and so yes,
Yeah.
but I don't think that every book translates like that. We were talking about
No,
this with
probably
my
not
book
from
club
stem to
member,
stern. Yeah, not
right?
from stem to stern. But I do
Like,
think that I think that we can learn from anything if we're open to it,
no, I
right?
think that's true. Yes, for
Um,
sure.
and I think that's part of it.
All right. So Amy is up here on the stage with us. I did mute you, Amy, but you can unmute yourself now and ask whatever. Amy happens to be my sister, so I
Awesome.
know
Hi,
she doesn't have a
Amy.
question for me. Make sure you unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello. I was
Hello.
just, I got in a little bit late because I was in the busy that you were talking about earlier,
Yes.
working way past the time I should work when I'm on salary. So, bygones. Anyway, I was just wondering if you could repeat what you had said that you do in the morning when you're like your morning routine. You had like 4 or 5 things that you just went,
Yeah.
oh, I do blah, 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 blah. And
I know.
I'd like to write it
It's
down.
silly simple. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I read, I reflect, I weed, seed, and water.
Got it.
Read, reflect, weed, seed, water. And you can
Okay.
kind of see, matter of fact, I did this one honestly just for I did this for a picture I was taking, but like, here's the reality of what it looks like. Don't judge me for my terrible handwriting. I always got like S minuses in elementary school for handwriting. It's terrible. But basically, literally at the top of my page, I write the date, and I actually do a little like symbol of a picture, because I want to take a snap. I just write like one sentence, like a snapshot of the day forward, just really to
Mhm.
have a frame of reference of kind of what was going on. So it might be, for me, it would have been like volleyball game today, podcast tonight, whatever. And then I read something inspirational. So I typically do morning devotionals. I like the Bible app, and I love Jesus Calling. Those are kind of my two go-tos right now. But over the
Mhm.
seasons, I've done different studies. Sometimes I've read just a motivational book, or even flipping through memes. You can, if that's something that inspires you. And then I write down what I call those hot heart tap moments, where I feel like they're right for me. I even sometimes write down the ones that I like reject immediately, because like sometimes you push away the thing that you really need, and I just
Right.
haven't
True.
recognized it yet.
Your
Yeah.
initial
So
reaction.
sometimes I'm like, whoa, I pushed that away a little bit too fast. I'm going to write that down, just like a little, check, and maybe I'll come back to that. And then I reflect on the day before. I look for the joy Usually that's just something silly like laughing out loud, or a silly thing that silly dog, whatever, could be a meme. And then I write down one thing that a goodness that I'm grateful for. So usually that's a little bit deeper, time with my kid in the car or whatever. And then growth, a little bit of growth that I saw the day before. Maybe it's something I've done towards my goal, or holding my tongue when somebody made me mad. It could be whatever.
What did I
And
get
then
right?
I write down any weeds I spotted from the day before. Sometimes that might be poor nutrition. Sometimes, oh my gosh, my daughter literally is coming home from volleyball, and my dog is just upset. Hold on, okay.
He's
My husband is
excited.
just here. And so I write that down, and really just like, I literally am like, I see you, weed. You were there. You're not going to beat me. I recognize you're there, and I'm going to do better tomorrow or today. And then I usually like once every month or 2 months, it just kind of depends. I go ahead and write down all of my seeds, the things that I want to grow. They don't change as often. I've written in my journal 3 times this week. I need to rewrite my weeds. I just haven't taken the time to go do it. And so what I do is I go and I read those. I read through them, and I read them out loud most of the time.
Your seeds or your weeds?
My seeds.
Your seeds. Okay.
Yes, my seeds.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I write down, then I water. That's when I take a look at the day ahead and decide what it is that I want to focus on. One of the things I've been trying to focus on more these last few weeks is eye contact. I am a girl who's like on a mission always. Like, I'm on to do the next thing. I got stuff I want to do, whatever it is. And so sometimes I can walk around my house like down in the thing that I'm doing, instead of stopping and really being present. And I'm learning that for me, eye contact helps me to be here, and not all over the place, that my 7 Enneagram likes to take me.
Right. And it's funny because I totally relate to that, because if I'm not head down, I'm in my head. So I've had that where people think that I'm purposefully like maybe not paying attention or ignoring, or, being snooty about something. And it's like, no.
Yeah. My husband's
You're
like,
thinking way too
hear
much.
me?
You're thinking way too much. It is nothing that complicated.
No.
I am literally in here, and that is it.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I need to go back and read the book again now, because first of all, I read it when I was young, so I have no idea that there was so much depth to it. But also, I love the analogy of things being seasonal, because it is quite like life, because things that are important to you today, and 6 months from now, you might look back and go, okay, that's not my goal anymore. I don't want to go that route anymore. It served its purpose in its time and place, and you can put it down. So I like that, because like I'm not good with plants, but I have a few plants that I rescued that are doing really well out back. And I am just like, so excited about it, like little life. So the whole analogy about watering and caring for yourself is great. So thank you for coming.
Hey, thank you for
thanks for
asking
coming
your
up.
question. And I'll also tell you the other thing I do with my journal. So I do that usually Monday through Saturday, and then Sundays, I basically read every single day. I read back through. And then I circle like the themes that kind of come up. Like sometimes literally every single day in my journal, the word rest will come up, and I'll get to the end of the week exhausted. And I'll be like, had I just actually done what my journal was telling me to do, I wouldn't. But sometimes it takes a week to be able to see what's right in front of you. And so I like to go back, and I take my markers to it, and I highlight and I color in the big things that I'm like, okay, and it's just one more, I'm a see it, say it, write it girl. It's really, for me, what gets it like down into my heart.
Yeah. And I there is something really, really big about writing it down, because there is something tactical about, like you said, you've said it to yourself, you may have thought about it, but then taking all of that and putting it into an action by writing it creates I know they've done scientific research on this where it creates a specific link that even if you don't go back to it, I've had things that I've written down as far as like a goal or something I wanted to accomplish that I've written down, and I go, wow, I never even looked at this again. But when it happens, I remember. And I'm like, my brain has been working towards this without me realizing it because I wrote it down 6 months ago. And here it is happening. Had I been intentional and watered that seed, it probably would have happened sooner. But those are the things, like writing it just makes such a difference. And, I love that about the journaling. So
let me ask you this. You were talking earlier about meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been reading quite a bit lately and listening to books, about this whole idea of like really taking these words off the page and like living them almost out in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And this, have you done any of that kind of stuff? Like, I mean, I don't know if the word's manifesting, but that's kind of it's the word that's coming to my mind, but I don't know that that's necessarily it.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it that. So since we last talked, as far as like on your podcast, I know we've been kind of in touch here and there, but you were doing all your bed and breakfast stuff and, but, I got my NLP master because I feel like the neuro linguistic programming is like a big, huge thing. So, like when you're talking about mindset, you need to be able to create a picture, and that's how our minds see things. So in an NLP meditation, that's exactly what it would do. It would specifically create it because your mind doesn't know the difference between what is real and what isn't real.
Right.
Like it doesn't know that. So when you tell yourself you're stupid, even if you're a Harvard graduate, but you tell yourself that you're stupid, your mind doesn't know the difference. It believes you. And so when you create that picture, and the more you create it, the stronger it becomes. Sometimes in those meditations, things will come up that become more clear because you're allowing your mind to go to those places and you're getting in touch with your creative intelligence, really. And when you do that, yeah, it's a form of being able to manifest something because your brain starts going to work because what is here and what is here is not matching. And it sees that as a discord, and it's going to start working to make it match. And that's technically what the law of attraction is, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it definitely, it's great. I mean, guided meditations are nice and all, but it needs to have enough, if you're going to do it like this, it needs to have enough freedom in it for you to create your own picture.
Right.
Right. So, and it works in both directions as well. So like if you have something that you want to disengage from, you can also picture it in a bubble, floating away, getting further. The bubble pops, it floats off into the space, and you can feel a release physically from recognizing that you can disengage and disconnect yourself from that particular thought because our thoughts are not us. We get to say what our thoughts are. So it is, it's fun. I don't usually.
I've heard somebody use the analogy of a shredder. If you want to get rid of something, just watch it go through the shredder. I thought that was a great analogy.
Right. We did a practice in June. It was like a mid-year review type thing that we did with the group. And the practice was, okay, and this would be perfect with your weeds, right? What is the biggest weed? It's stopping me. It's getting in my way. It's so rooted and I got to get to the root of it and I got to pull it out. What is that? And then when I get to it, write it down and throw it in the campfire. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. Figuratively, we did that. Right. But I did come home and tear it up, like you said, into pieces, and I burned it. And the reason why is because it's symbolic fire technically is cleansing. So there's a lot that can go into that. I'm not going to go off the deep end here, but it is symbolic, right, of total destruction. You want to be able to not piece that back together. Same thing with a shredder, right?
Yeah.
It's gone. It's done. There's nothing you can do about it. It's gone. So yeah, it's
I love that. I think that I know that there would be power in taking your seeds and then adding that visual piece to it. And I don't know if it's you just take one each day and you know, instead of reading them all every single day, maybe you read them once a week, and then each day you take one and visually, you know, see those things as reality. Because I know there's power in that. I know there is.
Oh, for sure. I should, and I'm going to go through your process and see if I can't come up with a simple way for it to be recreated, so that, like, if you want to present it in such a way. Yeah.
Awesome.
For sure. All right. Anybody else? Amy, did you have anything else that you wanted to say or ask? She's probably...
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm probably right. What are you going to talk about me?
No, I was thinking you might not have found the mute button. I do that. I'll start talking away and somebody will jump up and go, "Hey, by the way, you're on mute." And I'm giving the whole introduction muted. So that's what I was going to say. Okay. So I'm going to leave it at that. If nobody else wants to jump up, I tried to get Reagan to jump up. I'm just trying to call her out because that's my niece, and I know she probably remembers the book better than anybody else, because she's closer to the age where you were reading it in school. So, but anyway, she might be dead in the middle of something anyway. But you know, guys, thanks for being here at the show. Keri, thank you so much for saying yes to this. I see you, and you are beautiful. For everybody here listening, I feel the same way about you. I do believe we are all magic, that we all have the ability. We all have what we need inside of us already to heal, to grow, and to flourish, to bloom. Let's put it in the well-tended words. So, you know, I just want everybody to know that I like to share at the end of the show. And, you know, take care of yourselves, love each other, stay connected. And until next time, shine on. I'll see y'all later. Blessings and blooms. I love that.
Blessings and blooms.
Blessings and blooms. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to bring up Waypod.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Keri, so much for showing up here.